Hi again, this is Tim Hegarty, C++ Fundamentals from VTC. We are going to be looking at labeled statements right now, and actually we're going to start taking a look at a lot of different statements, expression statements and selection statements and iteration statements and all kinds of interesting things like that. But let's start out with labeled statements. To be used as the target of a goto, which you really shouldn't do all that much, but if you have to, you have to. But for a statement to be used as the target of a goto, it has to have a label, it has to have a name, so that the goto has someplace to go to. There are three types of labeled statements. The first one, which we're used to for goto, is identifier :statement. That's the label, and then whatever the label refers to, that one's used by goto. The next two, though, the case, constant, and then statement, that's used in a switch case, we're familiar with that, and the default : statement is also used by switch case, and we're familiar with that. It's exactly the same in C++ as it was in C, but let's take a little bit closer look at it in some code here. So here we have our little bit of a program from before, from enumeration, and we're just going to continue on with that, and I've added a few things to it. Here we have our sample enum, and it has 0, 1, 2, 3. Well, now, we had the 9 and 10 in there. That's pretty much the same. But now I've changed this up a little bit. We are going to do a write line of, and I'll make that quit flicking around there. We'll use the write line of our test enum call, and passing in 0, 1, and 2. 7 is not in our enum, so we should have some different kind of behavior with it. And 11 is completely out of bounds because the 10 was the top of our enum. The highest enumerator that we could have. So let's see what happens when we make these calls. Down here in test enum, I set up my return value to all 9s just to get some high value out of it. And now we'll do a little test here. If the in value that's coming in is greater than 10, and that's our enum, if it's greater than 10, then we go to quick end. Now quick end, that is a label down here. That's our goto label, and that's what we're talking about, a labeled statement. So here's quick end, and it's going to do a return of retval, whatever's in that little integer, the return value. So you can see our goto quick end, and that's the one kind of labeled statement. We've already been using the other labeled statements. So here's case 0 and a colon, so that's a label, and we will write line 0, and then we'll return 0, and case 1, and so on down through the list. And then here's our default. That's our third kind of labeled statement, default : and that labels what to do if none of the rest of these work. And we'll write none of the above. We'll set our return value to 9s and get out. So we can take a look at what happens here with our different possibilities as we run through our test rig. We'll control F5 and run this. So 0 worked correctly and returned 0. When 1 went in, it returned 1. That's fine. When 2 went in, it returned 2. That's good. Well, now 7, when it went in, we got a none of the above, and the return value was set to 999. So that's our default case. That default worked and said none of the above, returned 999. Then when 9 went in, it returned 9 properly, the way it was supposed to. And then here, this 999 is from when we put 11 in, and 11 went in, the if statement caught it. I remember that, the if statement caught it because it was greater than 10, and we went right to a quick end, which the return value was already 999. We jumped down to quick end, and we were out of there. So that did exactly what we thought it would do. And we are looking at labeled statements again. So we want to see the labels. There's the use of a label in a goto. There's the definition of labels. 0, 1, 2, that's the case, and a constant and a colon. We're just using the words because we have our cool enum up there, enumerator. And then down here we have our quick end actual label, which jumps us out. And that's labeled statements.